GM friends, welcome back to another episode on the Friends Validator Show. If this is your first rodeo, I'm yours, Jure Malbom, and this show is a hub that brings together crypto companies, exciting projects, and a thriving community. We at Friends Validator are core contributor to the staking sector and believe that it will grow into a multi-billion-dollar industry over the next couple of years. On the show, you will learn how to profit from the proof-of-stake revolution, how to make passive income in crypto with staking, and how to stay ahead of the curve. If this sounds interesting to you and you want to profit from the staking revolution, subscribe to this podcast show. And today, together with Danny and Mara from DeFi Dojo, I welcome Nomad from Vase to the show. Vase is an upcoming liquid staking protocol launching on Berachain, and we are going to dive deep into some interesting conversations about leveraging PoL, how liquid staking on Berachain might make more sense than staking natively, how Vase changes the dynamics of proof of liquidity via liquid staking, and much, much more. And with that being said, Nomad, welcome to the show. It's good to have you on. And also big shout out to Danny and Mara, of course.
Thanks, guys. Awesome to be here.
Yeah, super excited about this conversation. Also, Mara, Danny, how are you doing? All good? I've heard you are like all over South America these days, Danny.
I was muted there. Yeah, I'm in Ecuador doing some trekking and wandering around. So yeah, life's good, man.
Yeah, also super nice to meet you, Nomad. Super excited to learn about what y'all are building over there. So yeah, maybe you can just kind of start by giving us a little bit of a rundown on what Vase is and kind of like what you guys are aiming to build.
Yeah, absolutely. So Vase is a liquid risk-taking platform native to Berachain, and we leverage proof of liquidity and how this new consensus works to achieve this risk-taking effect. So at the core, Vase is a liquid staking protocol in which we will issue different LSTs for multiple chains. So we're not limited to one ecosystem, but we can actually focus on many, as the core value of our protocol is the incentive structure that we've built. This means that we can take assets from the Cosmos ecosystem, such as Cosmos or Osmosis, bring it into Berachain, and then use the PoL incentives to bring more life to this liquidity. So the way it works is in Berachain, the POS system is renovated into this thing called proof of liquidity, where all liquidity is made more productive. So what this allows us to do is leverage this system where validators are the ones pointing emissions. So in Berachain, you have the same inflation rate as what you would see in a proof of stake chain, but validators are the ones in charge of distributing these emissions. So instead of just securing the chain and producing blocks and maybe providing relaying services, PoL is the first instance where validators have economic influence in the chain, as they can select where the chain is sending inflation rewards, essentially. So what this creates is a way for validators to incentivize different liquidity pools of assets that are productive. In the case of Vase, we have designed the protocol in a way where we can actually work together with validators. And the best example would be for a validator that operates both in an external ecosystem and also in Berachain. So with Vase, users can choose which validator they want to liquid stake to. So instead of having the protocol decide where the liquidity will land, you can pinpoint. So for example, if a user has atoms staked with friends in Cosmos, they can still delegate everything to friends, but liquid stake their Vase. This LST is then issued in Berachain, where friends can use their Berachain validator to incentivize the liquidity from the same user. So being able to pinpoint where liquidity is sent on the delegation allows us this collaboration, and it sort of forms the basis of the incentive structure for Vase. Essentially, we allow validators to get the liquidity from their users in one chain, bring it into Berachain, and incentivize further, creating a sort of flywheel where they can create more loyalty and attract more delegations as all liquidity is made more productive.
That's super fascinating. So I'm curious just kind of like the practicalities of how this works. So I am holding Atom, those example that you're using. I go and I stake that on the Cosmos Hub with Friends Validator. And then I get a receipt token on Berachain issued by Vase. Is that right? Is that how that works?
Yeah, so the way you're going to be interacting is the main platform for Vase is going to be deployed in Berachain. So when you come to Vase, you're going to be able to connect your different wallets depending on the ecosystem you want. And then Vase looks for a balance of staking tokens. So if you have the tokens already in the Cosmos ecosystem, we're going to get that from you, and it's going to be staked in a vault managed by Vase directly in Cosmos. Then the issuance of the LST is going to use that as collateral, essentially, for users to be able to withdraw at a later date. And the LST is going to be issued natively as an ERC20 on the Berachain side. So you still retain all exposure to Atom in the native chain, but the derivative asset is issued in Berachain. So we will handle bridging, we will handle communications, unstaking, staking on behalf of the user, but most happens inside of Berachain.
And how do you deal with kind of like the duration risk, right? Like, so all of these different proof of stake chains have different periods of lockup, right? I think in the case of the Cosmos Hub, but it's like what, 21 days or even 28 days, some 21 days, something like that,
14
right?
days on Cosmos.
Yuri probably is the expert on this. Is it 14 days?
No, it's like Atom, yes, but there are also some with 21 days. So it's usually 14 or 21. But I imagine it to see it work like Stride, correct? So say I have like a liquid staking derivative from the Atom, of Atom, then I have like the opportunity to either sell the liquid staked Atom in the Berachain ecosystem if there's enough liquidity, or I just unstake it, and therefore I would need to wait for the unbonding period. Is that the correct way to do it?
Yeah, exactly. So whenever you want to withdraw from the actual contract, you're going to be faced with the unbonding period from the native chain. So for us, one of the things with Cosmos specifically, for example, is that you're limited to certain unbonding events per account on a 21-day period. So this essentially creates a sort of lag for unstaking events, which we go around by spreading the delegations into different buckets. So instead of just delegating from one vault that Vase controls, it's going to be split into multiple ones, allowing us to kind of circumvent this unbonding delay. In other protocols, this usually, for example, in the case of a 21-day unbonding day for an asset, it usually adds 1 to 3 days to the unbonding period. In the case of Vase, we won't face that issue. These buckets and different delegations kind of go around that. So you're just going to be experiencing the native unbonding period.
And what are the assets that you guys are looking to launch with? Obviously, we've been talking about Atom. There are other interesting, assets in the Cosmos ecosystem. Are you guys going to go beyond Cosmos and look at other proof of stake chains as well?
Yeah, absolutely. So what Berachain allows us to do is kind of take any sort of liquidity from any protocol, bring it into Berachain, and then further incentivize it. So given the direct connection between Berachain, like the Cosmos SDK for the consensus client, we're focusing a lot on the Cosmos ecosystem in tokens like Atom, Osmosis, Celestia, DYDX, and Dimension as the starters. These are all tokens that already have certain LST experience. There's already tokens issued for that, so people are kind of familiar with how the whole thing works. Cosmos ecosystem also is very underrepresented in terms of LST penetration. So you see an ecosystem like Ethereum, where 40% of all staked assets are in the form of LSTs, while Cosmos only has something like 1.5% of staked assets as LSTs. And this is something that we take into consideration for Vase Finance, as all our LSTs will retain the core features and utility of a traditional stake token. So one of the main things in Cosmos is going to be governance, right? People want to be able to vote, cast a vote on chain, be heard, and kind of steer the chain towards a certain goal. Then people also want to choose which validator they want. They may be aligned with a certain brand that gives them updates on different strategies on how to interact with DeFi and all of that. So there's this sense of loyalty. So for Vase, we retain these two things. We from the core protocol design, we allow users to choose validators when they're liquid staking. And for governance, users can actually cast their vote using something called vote as a proxy. So essentially, they use their LSTs to vote in the Vase Finance platform, and we cast the vote for them on chain. So, yeah.
Do I understand you correctly? So users can completely decide with which validators they want to stake their assets on the native chain, right?
Yes,
So
100%.
Okay, that's super interesting. Also, like from an integration point of view. One question that maybe Danny, you can also add a few cents to this conversation. In regards to the interoperability part, I mean, Berachain made the news with saying we may be a Cosmos SDK chain, but we won't use IBC. So all of this interoperability magic that you described here mainly comes from Union. So just like to pick up also a little bit the question that Mara just asked. What are like the assets beyond the Cosmos that we can expect to use in the very beginning? You mentioned Solana, Ethereum. So how far are these integrations? Like, can you give us some insights? Will it be really that on the first day I can go ahead and liquid stake Solana on Berachain?
Yeah, so all of those connections are going to be something that's going to happen in mainnet. So of course, the Ethereum connection is a day one thing, but then things like Union and whenever we want to bridge to Solana or get assets from that, it's going to depend on the timeline of how all of these assets are deployed. So we prepared Vase to be able to receive all of these tokens. We don't limit ourselves to a certain type of interaction with different chains, in a sense that we can take any asset. This was important for us to do because if we're promoting something like restaking and making liquidity productive, we need to be able to give our users choice. So if you're an ETH user and you want to take advantage of this rehypothecation inside of Berachain, then that's going to be your approach. If you're in Solana, then that's going to be your approach. So that's what gives us like further utility from different liquid staking protocols, and it's how the Berachain proof of liquidity system should be used. So all liquidity comes in and you can expect yields coming from that.
And will there be like Berachain native assets that are going to be LSTs as well? Like, are we going to see liquid staked Bera or liquid staked BGT, or how does that kind of fit in? Is it going to be mainly bringing external assets into the ecosystem, or will there be, derivatives that are native to the ecosystem itself?
For us, it's all going to be external liquidity. So I'm not sure if you're familiar with this protocol, Vase Finance, but they are the ones that are handling BGT and Bera derivatives. It's a completely different way of functioning because of how vastly different PoL is from normal POS chains. So the mechanics of how IBGT, which is their derivative, works are different. It's not something we're handling, and we think Infrared has got it well under control. So we're actually looking for ways to collaborate with them. So we're not competitors. We're not going to be issuing the same assets. And we actually built Vase thinking of using Infrared as a sort of additional incentive source. So what Infrared allows you to do is deposit any liquidity through their vaults. They will handle this liquidity for you and issue the BGT emissions as a IBGT, the liquid staking derivative. So that's going to be part of how we do incentives at Vase.
This is all super exciting. These are things that within the Cosmos ecosystem that certainly Yuri and I have been involved in for the last 4 years. These are problems that Quicksilver and Stride and different liquid staking providers have been trying to solve. And so it's super exciting that you will be able to retain voting in governance, as well as being able to stay liquid staked on that native chain. So the question is like how I was wondering if like we could take like a step back and you could just go into your understanding of how proof liquidity is going to work and how exactly how like emissions and the gauge system are going to work.
Yeah, absolutely. So at the core, you could say that PoL is kind of a buffer of inflation. So all BGT emissions that are controlled by validators are still part of a POS system, right? Just in Berachain, the emissions, instead of just being sent straight to validators as staking APR, validators actually have a way of pointing these to different protocols that might be more productive. So let's say Berachain starts with a 10% chain inflation. If we didn't have BGT, then all of that would just be going to Bera, and it's a traditional POS chain. What PoL allows you to do is, instead of just feeding validators fees and paying for that economic security directly, you actually reward protocols on the way. So this is how the bribe system will work, where protocols can bribe different validators to receive emissions, and then validators also have a role where they can maximize their profits. So as a baseline to sustain the costs of running a validator, that's going to be the main Bera bond that you put into the chain. So you have to stake 69K Bera to spin up the validator, and that should cover your baseline costs. And then anything over that is going to be done by you participating in the PoL incentive framework. So if you cover costs, then yeah, you're going to continue operating. But if you really want to maximize your participation in all of this, then you're going to have to collaborate with protocols, or you're going to have to use some sort of automation for your validator, as you can shift rewards every around 5 hours. It's 8,000 blocks. So you're going to have to be very proactive in how you handle all of this. And this is perfect because it aligns every actor inside the chain. So instead of just paying for economic security without validators having any role, you have protocols working with validators, attracting people to delegate to them, validators incentivizing different protocols, and it all has like different economic games that you can play. And this is something